There comes a time in every life when silence grows heavier than words. When you look around for hands that once held yours and find only echoes. When laughter fades into the wind and you stand in the quiet of your own heart, wondering if anybody, anywhere, truly cares about you. It is a question older than time, carried by the weary, whispered by the forgotten, and buried deep in the bones of those who have loved too much and received too little. But the truth, my dear, is not a soft one. Nobody cares about you, not in the way you dream they should. Nobody wakes each morning with your burdens tucked beneath their pillow. Nobody carries your pain in their pockets. Nobody traces your scars and names them wholly. The world turns whether you rise or fall. And that is the lesson the soul must learn before it grows wings. For so long, we are taught that love will come from outside. That if we give enough, smile enough, serve enough, we will be seen, we will be cherished. But the earth does not ask the rain for permission to bloom. The sea does not beg the sky for validation. You, too, must not beg the world to care. The miracle lies not in being cared for, but in caring for yourself when nobody else does. That is where strength is born. In the wilderness of your solitude, in the fire you build from your own broken pieces. When you discover that nobody truly cares about you, it is not a tragedy. It is a beginning. Because in that revelation, you are freed from the chains of expectation. You are no longer a puppet pulled by invisible strings of approval. You are no longer a shadow stretching itself to please. You become whole. You become the voice that says, I am enough. I am worthy of care, even if I am the only one who offers it. And oh, what a freedom that is. To walk into a room and not need to be seen to exist. To speak, not for applause, but for truth. To live, not for love, but from it. The world may never clap for your victories, but the sky still opens to receive your light. The wind still hums your name through the trees. The dawn still rises because you are here. You matter, not because somebody cares, but because you do. There is a sweetness in solitude when you stop running from it. It holds a mirror that does not lie. In its stillness you will meet yourself. Not the self that performs, not the one painted in smiles, but the raw, unguarded being who has survived storms without shelter. You will see the beauty in your own resilience, the poetry in your persistence, and you will know that caring for yourself is not selfishness, it is salvation. Nobody cares about you when you are down, but that is when you must rise. Nobody feeds your spirit when it is starving, so you must learn to cook your own light. Nobody teaches you how to heal, so you must become both doctor and medicine. You must be tender with your pain and fierce with your dreams. You must whisper to yourself, I am my own keeper. I am my own home. When you begin to care for yourself deeply, the world shifts, not because it suddenly cares, but because you no longer need it to. You stop chasing what does not see you. You stop shrinking for comfort. You stop apologizing for existing. You learn to sit in your solitude like a queen sits on her throne. Not lonely, but whole. Not bitter, but wise. Do not wait for the world to understand you. The world misunderstood every prophet, every poet, every dreamer who ever dared to love themselves in a place that profits from doubt. Walk anyway. Speak anyway. Be anyway. Nobody cares about you until they do, and by the time they do, you will not need them. You will have built a sanctuary within yourself that no indifference can invade. When you wake up and the world feels cold, wrap yourself in the warmth of your own kindness. When no one asks how you are, ask yourself. When no one shows up, show up for you. When the mirror reflects fatigue instead of beauty, whisper, I am still here, and that is enough. Because, my dear, being here, breathing, feeling, trying, is a miracle that needs no audience. The universe does not care about your wounds, but it does honor your will. Every breath you take is proof that creation still has plans for you. Every heartbeat is a vote for life. So do not waste your days begging for care from those who cannot even care for themselves. Their blindness is not your burden. Their indifference is not your measure. The world will call you selfish for choosing yourself. It will name you cold for refusing to beg. It will say you have changed, and you will have. You will have shed the skin of dependence and stepped into the divine truth that self-love is not rebellion, it is resurrection. There is a rhythm to loneliness, and if you listen closely, it beats with the same pulse as courage. It tells you that you can walk alone and still be whole, that you can cry and still be strong, that you can lose everything and still rise with grace. For strength is not built in the applause of the crowd. It is born in the quiet when nobody cares. And yet, you choose to rise anyway. You are not here to be cared for. You are here to become care itself. To be the compassion you never received. To be the kindness you begged for. To be the voice that soothes your own trembling heart. When you become that, you will find that you never needed the world to care. You only needed to remember that you are the world. When nobody cares about you, the night feels longer, but even the longest night must yield to dawn. You are that dawn. You are that light creeping through the cracks of your own despair. You are proof that survival is an art form. And every time you choose to love yourself, you paint another masterpiece on the canvas of your life. Do not be disheartened by neglect. Every seed grows in the dark. Every diamond forms under pressure. Every soul is tested in silence. What feels like abandonment is often initiation. What feels like loneliness is often transformation. What feels like being unseen is often the universe saying, see yourself first. So, see yourself. See your strength, your tenderness, your contradictions. See the light flickering even in your breaking. Care for that light. Feed it, protect it. Speak kindly to it. And watch it grow until it fills the spaces where love once lacked. Nobody cares about you, and that's all right. Because once you accept that truth, you will care enough for yourself to never again chase the half-hearted or settle for the unseeing. You will walk with the quiet pride of one who knows their worth. You will stop auditioning for affection and start commanding respect. You will live not as a plea but as a poem. And the world, my dear, will feel you, even if it does not understand you, even if it never says your name. Your existence will echo through the air, through the lives you touch, through the art you create, through the light you leave behind. Nobody cares about you. Then be the one who does. Be the one who listens when your spirit whispers. Be the one who forgives your own mistakes. Be the one who claps for yourself in empty rooms. Be the one who holds your heart as gently as a newborn dream. You were not born to be cared for. You were born to care. For the world, for the broken, for the forgotten, and most of all, for yourself. Your care is divine. Your care is revolutionary. Your care is the beginning of freedom. When the world turns away, turn inward. When they forget you, remember yourself. When they silence you, sing louder. When they doubt you, believe deeper. Because every time you rise from neglect, you become the proof that the human spirit cannot be destroyed by indifference. The day you stop waiting for care is the day you begin to live. The day you stop asking to be seen is the day your light expands. The day you stop chasing love is the day you become it. That is the secret, the sacred alchemy of the soul. Nobody cares about you until you do. And when you do, when you finally pour that endless love into yourself, the universe will mirror it back in ways you never imagined. Not because it suddenly noticed you, but because you finally noticed yourself. So stand tall, my dear. Let the world spin as it must. Let the crowds forget your name. Let the silence stretch. For you are not alone. You are all that you need. You are your own sunrise. You are your own answer. You are the care the world forgot to give. Nobody cares about you. And yet, here you are, blooming anyway. True freedom begins when you stop expecting others to care. It is the moment when you finally release your soul from the invisible chains of longing. For too long, you have waited for someone to notice your efforts, to acknowledge your pain, to validate your dreams. You have poured yourself into empty vessels, hoping they would one day overflow back into you. But all you found was silence, cold, echoing silence. And it was in that silence that the truth began to speak. You were never meant to depend on another heart to confirm your worth. You were never meant to beg for affection like a beggar knocking at closed doors. Freedom lives in the realization that care, love, and validation are not rewards to be earned, they are choices to be made within. When you stop expecting others to care, you stop suffering from their absence. You stop tying your joy to their attention. You stop bleeding over their indifference. You begin to understand that human care is fleeting. It shifts with time, mood, and circumstance. But the care that comes from within you, that sacred energy of self-compassion, it does not waver. It stays, it grows. It becomes your shelter when the world forgets your name. This kind of freedom is not loud. It is quiet, steady, unshakable. It gives you the courage to walk through rooms without needing to be seen, to speak without waiting for applause, to live without begging to be loved. When the realization first arrives, it hurts. You feel the weight of all your unreciprocated giving. You remember the times you showed up for people who vanished when it was your turn to fall. You remember the birthdays forgotten, the calls unanswered, the love unreturned. You remember every moment you thought you mattered, only to find that you were an option, a convenience, a background sound. But that pain is not a punishment. It is purification. It burns away the illusion that your happiness lies in someone else's hands. It forces you to confront the only person who has ever truly had the power to care for you. Yourself. Freedom blooms when you start showing up for yourself with the same devotion you once gave to others. When you start listening to your own needs instead of silencing them. When you treat your own heart with gentleness instead of judgment. The world may not clap for this kind of transformation, but it will feel it. The energy of a person who no longer expects care, but gives it to themselves is magnetic. You walk differently. You breathe differently. You look at life not as something owed to you, but as something entrusted to you. You no longer chase comfort, you create it. You no longer seek belonging, you embody it. You no longer plead to be seen. You see yourself so clearly that the world has no choice but to follow your light. Self-love is the highest form of rebellion against neglect. It is the quiet uprising that begins in the heart when you finally grow tired of being unseen. The world teaches you to serve, to give, to bend, to prove. It tells you that to be worthy, you must earn care, earn love, earn rest. It demands your obedience to its cold systems of approval. But when you choose to love yourself, you defy every lesson that told you that your value depended on someone else's recognition. You stop waiting to be chosen. You stop kneeling at the altar of external validation. You rise, and in that rising, you declare that your existence is sacred simply because it is yours. Neglect is not just the absence of love. It is the slow erosion of your spirit through indifference. It tells you that your feelings are too much, that your needs are inconvenient, that your dreams are excessive. It silences you until you forget the sound of your own soul. And yet, deep inside, a flicker remains, a whisper that says you are meant for more than being tolerated. When you begin to love yourself, you listen to that whisper. You feed it with kindness, you nourish it with care, and it grows into a fire that cannot be dimmed by neglect. You stop seeking warmth from those who live in the cold. You build your own fire and let its light remind you that you were never abandoned by life itself. Self-love does not ask for permission. It does not apologize for existing. It does not wait to be invited to the table. It builds its own and sits there in peace. To love yourself is to reclaim every part of you that was dismissed, to hold the broken pieces not as flaws but as proof of endurance. It is to look in the mirror and see a survivor, not a victim. It is to speak to yourself with gentleness when the world speaks with cruelty. And it is to know that you can stand in your own power without the need to explain or justify it. The world often mistakes self-love for arrogance because it cannot control those who possess it. A person who loves themselves deeply cannot be manipulated by guilt, by fear, or by loneliness. They know that love is not something to chase. It is something to cultivate. When you love yourself, you become a garden that flourishes even in drought. You understand that your worth is not transactional. You learn to say no without guilt and yes without fear. You begin to choose peace over approval, truth over performance, authenticity over acceptance. That is rebellion in its purest form, to exist in a world that profits from your insecurity and still choose to love yourself loudly, fiercely, and without apology. Solitude is not punishment, it is preparation for power. The world often paints loneliness as a curse, a mark of failure, a sign that you are unwanted or unloved. But solitude, when embraced with an open heart, becomes the sacred ground where you meet your truest self. It strips away the noise of the crowd, the demands of expectation, the masks you wear to fit in. In the quiet, you are forced to listen to the voice that has always lived inside you. The one you silenced in order to be accepted. That voice does not speak in the language of fear or comparison. It speaks in the language of truth. It tells you who you are beneath the layers of approval and abandonment, beneath the ache to belong. When you find yourself alone, it is not the world turning its back on you. It is life turning you toward yourself. The solitude that once felt like exile becomes a sanctuary. It becomes the place where you gather the fragments of your strength, where you learn that your worth is not measured by who stays beside you, but by who you become when no one does. In that stillness, you begin to understand that power is not noise or control. It is quiet confidence, born from knowing that you can stand without leaning. Solitude teaches you how to breathe without waiting for permission, how to dream without needing reassurance, how to trust your own wisdom when no one else believes in it. It is in solitude that your spirit sharpens. You begin to see things clearly, the people, the patterns, the places that drained your light. You see how often you traded your peace for company, how often you mistook distraction for love. You begin to recognize that solitude is not a void to be filled, but a space to be honored. It gives you the time to rebuild your foundation with intention, to decide what kind of life you wish to create and who deserves access to your energy. It is where vision is born, where clarity returns, where strength becomes steady. The ones who fear being alone are often those who have never met themselves fully, who have never dared to sit in the silence long enough to hear the truth echo back. When you allow solitude to teach you, it becomes your greatest ally. You stop chasing temporary comforts. You stop fearing the quiet. You stop believing that love must always come from outside of you. You begin to realize that solitude is where you become whole again, where you rediscover your rhythm, your creativity, your power. Every great transformation begins in isolation. The seed does not bloom in the open. It grows first in the dark, protected by stillness, nourished by patience. So too must the soul. Solitude is not punishment. It is the preparation ground where your strength matures, where your spirit learns endurance, where your light learns to burn steady even in the absence of applause. Caring for yourself is an act of divine responsibility. It is not vanity. It is not selfishness. It is the sacred duty of honoring the life you have been given. From the moment you entered this world, you were entrusted with one vessel: your mind, your body, your spirit. Yet somewhere along the way, you were taught that care must be earned, that love must be proven, that tending to yourself was indulgence instead of necessity. You learned to pour endlessly into others while leaving yourself empty. You learn to measure your worth by how much of yourself you could give away. But the truth is, neglecting yourself is a quiet betrayal of your own divinity. You cannot serve the world from a place of depletion. You cannot pour from a vessel that has been left to dry. Caring for yourself is not a choice made out of comfort. It is a promise made out of reverence. When you begin to care for yourself deeply, you start to understand that every act of tenderness toward your own being is a prayer. Feeding your body nourishing food, speaking kindly to yourself, resting without guilt. These are forms of worship. They are declarations that your existence matters, that you are worthy of gentleness, that your energy is sacred. The world may demand your strength, but strength without care becomes cruelty toward the self. Real strength is soft. It is found in the moments when you protect your peace, when you walk away from chaos, when you forgive yourself for not knowing better sooner. Caring for yourself means refusing to abandon yourself for the sake of belonging. It means knowing when to pause, when to breathe, when to say no even if no one understands. There is holiness in care. It realigns you with the rhythm of the universe, reminding you that you are part of creation, not separate from it. The sun rises and sets not out of obligation, but out of design. The rivers flow not to prove their worth, but because that is their purpose. You too must learn to care for yourself, because that is your purpose. To nurture the life that moves within you. When you do, you begin to live from abundance instead of scarcity. You stop giving from desperation. You start giving from fullness. You stop surviving and start existing with intention. Caring for yourself is also an act of resistance in a world that profits from your exhaustion. The world does not benefit from you being whole. It benefits from you being wary, compliant, and disconnected from your own power. To care for yourself is to say, I refuse to be consumed. It is to choose restoration over depletion, clarity over confusion, peace over performance. It is to become your own sanctuary in a world that constantly demands pieces of you. When you care for yourself with devotion, you return to your original state, the state of wholeness you had before the world told you to earn it. The world may never applaud you. Rise anyway. There will be days when your efforts go unseen, when your words echo into emptiness, when your kindness is met with silence. You will give and give, expecting acknowledgement, and find none. You will pour your heart into dreams that no one claps for, into love that is not returned, into work that seems invisible. But your worth cannot depend on their applause, for applause is fickle, and truth does not need an audience to exist. Rising is not about recognition. It is about remembering who you are even when the world forgets. It is about standing tall not because they cheer for you, but because you have decided to no longer shrink. You must understand that the world often looks away from quiet strength. It does not always celebrate those who heal in silence, who endure without complaint, who create beauty from their pain. Yet it is those souls who change the world from the inside out. The loud ones may draw attention, but the steady ones build foundations. Rising in the absence of applause is an act of faith, a declaration that your purpose is greater than your need to be seen. It is saying, I will continue even if no one notices. It is choosing consistency over validation, integrity over recognition, essence over image. The world has always misunderstood quiet resilience. It mistakes humility for weakness, silence for surrender, grace for passivity. But those who rise without applause know a secret. Their strength does not come from being admired. It comes from surviving what was meant to break them. Every time you rise unseen, you are shaping yourself into something indestructible. Every time you keep going without acknowledgement, you teach your soul endurance. Every time you move forward in the dark, you become a light that does not depend on permission to shine. There will be moments when doubt whispers that you are wasting your time, that your efforts do not matter, that your work is unseen, that your love is unappreciated. But you must keep rising. You must keep showing up. Because your growth is not meant to entertain them. It is meant to liberate you. The flower does not bloom because anyone watches. It blooms because blooming is its nature. The tree does not stretch toward the sky because of applause. It stretches because that is what it was born to do. And so must you. You rise not for approval, but for alignment. You rise because the act itself is holy, because standing in your truth is its own reward. When the world does not notice, rise anyway. When it dismisses you, rise anyway. When it forgets your name, rise anyway. For the measure of your greatness will never be found in the noise of applause, but in the quiet courage that keeps you standing tall when no one sees. When you become your own source of care, you become unstoppable. There is a transformation that happens when you stop waiting for others to fill you, when you stop living for the crumbs of attention, when you stop tying your worth to how gently or harshly the world treats you. It is not an easy shift. It requires unlearning the lessons that taught you to chase love, to beg for validation, to earn rest. But once you turn inward, once you find the endless well of care within yourself, you are no longer dependent on anyone to sustain you. You begin to understand that your peace is your responsibility, your joy your creation, your strength your inheritance. You learn that the love you were searching for was never missing. It was buried beneath layers of doubt and self-forgetting. You begin to see yourself not as a victim of neglect, but as the source of your own healing. Becoming your own source of care means meeting yourself with compassion even when the world offers none. It means saying to your reflection, I will not abandon you again. It means holding your own heart with tenderness when it trembles, speaking softly to yourself when fear arrives, and standing guard over your boundaries with reverence. There is power in this gentleness, a power that does not roar but glows steadily from within. You become the mother to your own soul, the protector of your own peace, the friend you always needed. You begin to realize that the love you offer yourself creates ripples that change everything around you. It is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is not isolation, it is awakening. When you become your own source of care, you stop chasing broken things. You stop running after people who do not know how to hold you. You stop confusing attention with affection. You begin to live from abundance, not hunger. You begin to see relationships not as lifelines but as choices. Beautiful, voluntary exchanges between whole beings, not desperate grasps between the wounded. You start to attract what you are, not what you lack. The universe rearranges itself around the energy of a person who no longer pleads to be saved. It opens doors that once seemed sealed shut. It sends peace where chaos used to dwell. Because when you care for yourself deeply, you vibrate on a frequency that only truth can hear. This care manifests in countless ways. Sometimes it looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like saying no to what you once said yes to. Sometimes it looks like silence. But every act of self-care, however small, is a declaration of your worth. It is you saying, I am here, and I matter. When you feed your body with nourishment instead of neglect, you are honoring your existence. When you refuse to settle for less than respect, you are affirming your divinity. When you take time to heal, you are acknowledging that your wounds deserve patience, not punishment. People may not understand this version of you. They may call you selfish, detached, cold. But their misunderstanding is a reflection of their own emptiness. Those who have not learned to care for themselves will always fear those who have. Because a person who is self-sustained cannot be controlled. You cannot guilt them into staying. You cannot shame them into silence. You cannot use their kindness as a leash. They have tasted freedom. And once freedom is tasted, there is no going back. You begin to walk differently, not with arrogance, but with assurance. You speak with calm authority. You stop explaining yourself to those who do not listen. You become grounded, not because life stops hurting, but because you no longer look outside yourself for soothing. You carry your own balm now. You know how to hold yourself through the storms. There is beauty in that self-sufficiency, but there is also softness. Becoming your own source of care does not mean building walls. It means building roots. You do not close yourself off from love. You simply no longer make love your lifeline. You are open to giving and receiving, but you are not dependent on either. You can be alone without being lonely. You can share your energy without losing it. You can love others from fullness, not from fear. When you care for yourself deeply, your love becomes purer, freer, and more generous because it is no longer coming from a place of depletion. You love not to be needed, but because it is your nature to love. You start to see care as a sacred practice, not a transaction. You realize that caring for yourself allows you to care for others without resentment. It teaches you balance. You no longer burn yourself out trying to prove your goodness. You no longer equate sacrifice with love. You no longer chase exhaustion as a badge of worth. You rest when you need to. You speak when it matters. You walk away when it's time. And through it all, you remain centered. This is the quiet strength of a person who knows they are their own home. You also begin to trust life again. Because when you care for yourself, you move from survival into harmony. You stop reacting and you start creating. You stop fearing the next disappointment, and you start focusing on what you can nurture within yourself. You find joy in simplicity, peace in presence, clarity in silence. You no longer wait for the perfect moment to begin. You begin now with what you have, with who you are. You stop expecting the world to deliver happiness to your doorstep. You build it room by room inside your own heart. When you are your own source of care, you become unshakable not because pain disappears, but because it can no longer define you. You learn that heartbreak does not destroy you. It refines you. You learn that failure does not shame you. It shapes you. You learn that loneliness does not diminish you. It deepens you. Everything that once broke you now becomes part of your becoming. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Thank you." You understand that every wound invited you to return home to yourself. You begin to see how even your hardest seasons were preparing you to love yourself in ways you never had before. And this love, this care, it does not make you invincible. It makes you whole. It gives you permission to live fully, to walk with dignity, to dream without fear of loss. You realize that the most powerful thing you can do in a world that profits from your insecurity is to be at peace with who you are. You become unstoppable not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can unmake you. You rise each day with the quiet certainty that no matter what happens, you have yourself. You are safe within your own presence. You are guided by your own light. You are held by your own love. And in that truth, you are free.